Oh, it says excellent connection. Redirecting to the live streaming page. Oh, boom. Okay. Okay, so we are live. We're live now, officially. Okay, cool. Oh, yep, yep, it works. Oh, there's even some kind of strange closed caption going on there. Okay, stream
I was
settings,
messing with that.
everything's fine. Oh, you were playing with it on Zoom?
Yeah,
Oh, why does it have
yeah.
Zoom branding? I tried it before, and maybe that's because you're you have Pro Zoom
I
Pro too, or
do
no?
not.
I wonder though. That's weird. No, because I started. It's my account. Huh. Well, oh well. Last time I did it. I don't know. Maybe I did it straight to YouTube. Well, anyway. Okay, it's fine. I'd prefer they didn't. We didn't use their brandings, but whatever. Okay. So, welcome everybody. If you're seeing this channel, you probably know who I am. I'm Garrett Don. Um, you've seen me on a couple of the other streams here and over on the Radical Undoing channel. But I also want to introduce you to my friend Chris. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? Keith, glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. So, Chris and I have decided, as you already know, the channel is called Theosis Spiritual Talks. We might change that name as we explore what we'd like to do here with the channel. But for today, we want to sort of set the aim for it by introducing ourselves a little more deeply and sharing how we ended up at Eastern Orthodoxy. As you see from the title, that has to do with it's a little bit different for both of us, but there's a lot of overlap, and that's going from anarchism and atheism, in my case, to occultism, and then to ultimately to orthodoxy through a long, weird chain of events. And Chris had a similar but different adventure. So we'll get into a little bit of that, not in sort of a Protestant witnessing, testimonial, raise the hands to the Lord kind of way, but in a functional way, and in a way that hopefully will create an invitation if you're seeing this as someone who's curious about orthodoxy or even about religion in general. If you're someone who considers yourself a seeker, or you're into Eastern mysticism or religious studies, as they call it, or you're currently in the occult. I like to call it the endless seekers. So this is also for you to have a chance to maybe go deeper with with your worldview and what you're seeking, and maybe to start undoing some of the things that are incoherent about that. That's a little bit of the aim. Chris, do you have more to add about that?
That sounds good. I could, but I think it'd be best just to get into it, and as we talk and as we share a story, more will unfold.
Sure, man. Cool. So why don't you go ahead and go first, Chris? Just
Sure.
share, how did we end up here?
Yeah, I would say, I never had the atheism phase. Um, and I was thinking about why that might be. And, I had a trip when I was 14 years old I don't know if you've heard of Robitussin or robo tripping
Oh,
rather.
I've
And
heard of it.
there's a, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a chemical in Robitussin in particular and a couple other cough medicines called dextromethorphan. And this is like a cousin of PCP and ketamine. And ketamine, by the way, I don't know if you are aware of the popularity, the explosion of ketamine therapy. And we should talk about that at some point because I think it's one of the most dangerous um, chemicals there is dispute in regards to prelist and spiritual delusion. But anyways, I had this experience with
Interesting. Yeah. Special K.
dextromethorphan. V, v- yeah. I swallowed like 42 cough drops when I was like 14 at the behest of my older stepbrother who came over to spend the night, whatever, drank a bottle of it, told me about it. I was all in.
Oh man.
So I had this experience that just blew my mind, and it was a very spiritual experience. I mean, it was blissful. It was, it was just everything. Um, and at the end of it, I said, I feel like I've been reborn. And I also had a panic attack shortly after that, just slammed back into my body, right? Because these things, this is a disassociative. So it's a disassociative, but at the higher levels, which is what I took, the dose I took it at, it's psychedelic as well. So it's like psychedelic anesthetic, you could say. Um, and so having this experience of, you might call, the astral plane, or wherever you go on these psychedelics, which we could talk about at some point. Um, that I think drilled in me like, okay, there's a spiritual realm, there's a realm that you can't talk to, or that you can't really talk about. And then from there, 2 weeks later, I had a book called The 90-Day Guide to Out of Body Experiences, discovered lucid dreaming. So all the kind of what you might call new age stuff, that kind of opened the door to that for me. Um, then, I would come home every day after school and sit there and try to put my body to sleep and keep my mind awake, right? Doing kind of these, what you might call NSDR before it was popular, when I was, a young teenager. Um,
Why did you take the Robitussin to begin, or the cough medicine to begin with? Were you like searching, or were you in pain? Or were you just like curious kid?
it was curiosity mixed with, I would say, I got a strong case of, let's say, the forbidden fruit syndrome.
Okay.
So I had no hesitation. I was like, oh, give it to me, let me try it, whatever.
Yeah.
And at that point I had smoked weed, which blew my mind as well. Like, I was probably an addict in a sense since the first time I smoked weed, because it was just like, this is incredible, you know what I mean? And after
Yeah.
that, it was like regular life just didn't cut it for me anymore.
Uh,
um so yeah, I was always seeking, and fascinated with strange things, yeah, the whole that. So, which plays out over the rest of the next 20 years, really. But that was my first encounter, let's say, with something spiritual, with the new age.
mhm.
um Osho's teaching, like, he was literally on the website called the Dextroverse. They told you how to extract dextromethorphan from cough syrup, trip reports, all that
Oh,
thing. So I'm on the internet 14, just, going all in on
on the
this
OSHA
stuff.
website they had this. It was
No,
related to it.
this was on the
Oh, okay.
dextroverse.org, which was everything about dextro, about robo tripping essentially. But on that, it was like there was a tab, spirituality, and on that they gave you this whole long, basically how to use Robitussin and do basically chakra meditations with Osho, like kind of based off Osho's teachings and a certain soundtrack, to have these experiences on Robitussin.
Oh man, God
So
bless
that
the
was my aim
syncretists. Yeah,
for
yeah,
a
yeah,
while.
yeah, yeah. Just patch it all together. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get
Yeah,
there
yeah.
though. Yeah. Okay, cool. That gives
So
some
then,
background. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So then it was, then the bad drugs entered the scene, and petty crime, and it was like, from weed to ecstasy to cocaine to Vicodin and Xanax. Just, that was my late teens. Then the psychedelics came back around age 18, 19, 20, and I had a couple more just experiences with LSD and mushrooms that just blew my head open. At the same time, I discovered the occult, in particular Aleister Crowley, and just, next thing I knew, I had, the Golden Dawn book and 11 lessons on the high magic cards. Like, I was all in. I was like, this is it. This is what religion's all about. The alchemy, so I went, really into the occult, and you might say the more serious occultists, Dion Fortune and Paul Foster Case, and then got initiated into the BOTA, the Builders of the Aditum, which was like an offshoot of the Golden Dawn. Um, and was just fascinated by the Kabbalah and magic and this whole Western esoteric stuff. Um, so that, in combination with the psychedelics, went out west at some point. Was like, how can I, know, kind of make a life with this stuff? Became a yoga teacher. went to the jungle for the first time shortly after that. Then my path kind of switched from the occult stuff more into shamanism and ayahuasca in particular. So went back and forth to the Amazon for 3 4 years, a lot, and moved to Ecuador at some point. Got introduced to more now Native American spirituality and the Sweat Lodge and Vision Quest and San Pedro. So I kept this kind of underlying occult worldview, this kind of Crowleyan, Eon of Horus type stuff, and but at the same time was practicing more indigenous shamanic things and not so much like the ceremonial magic. I was like, oh, well, this kind of satisfies that part for me, and that was my path. Kind of went that route. Then that kind of culminated into a 3 year course, a psychedelic therapy training that kind of brought me kind of integrated Western psychotherapy with indigenous teachings. And that's kind of where I got reintroduced to kind of somatic work and bioenergetics, not necessarily by that name, the Gurdjieff stuff. This is kind of all packed into this course. Like we would go on pilgrimages, and we'd also work with psychedelics and kind of all these different therapeutic tools. That's kind of in the Naranjo, Fritz Perls lineage. That all kind of culminated in a major breakdown, a kind of nervous breakdown, you could say, spiritual crisis that led me essentially to an encounter with Christ that showed that in light of that, I could see the false teachings, that just the whole thing, and there was just, I don't even know how to put it. We can get more into that. I just kind of, that was a very intense period, and a lot of things happened during that kind of 1 2 year unfolding from Native American introduction to Native American spirituality and the Native American church, peyote, and kind of started to come through there, and then it culminated in this, kind of led me to Orthodoxy ultimately. So there's a lot of details I skipped over there, obviously, but that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And with that, Builders of the Atheism, was there like a local group, or is this by mail or by email
This
or
was by
online?
mail. I would get
Uh-huh.
the teachings in line, which is kind of based off the tarot, and you might say almost like he almost mixed pranayama and tarot together. So, the idea kind of being, aligning the microcosm with the macrocosm through the map of the tarot, and also, meditation and ritual magic kind of all in
Mm-hmm.
one. Um,
But specific ritual magic, or just whatever you want?
for him, it was more like less ritual based and um, more meditation based, really meditating on the tarot cards. Um,
Is that the one
kind
of
of
Cube of Space or something like that? Is that the?
Yes, yes,
Uh-huh.
yes,
Okay.
yep, that whole thing. Like, um, he would have you do exercises like play the note C learn all of the whole symbol structure of the Western esoteric tradition, the astrological symbols, the Hebrew right? So the backbone of the whole Western esoteric tradition is the tree of life, you could say. So like getting that in your system, in your psyche, in your mind, in your body is part of the point. And then through that kind of meditation and scrying on the planes on the different cards, and building this internal tree of life in your system until you kind of start to have these experiences where you realize you are the life force experiencing itself, right? It's very um for I'm writing an article on this right now, actually, something like the force versus the father, because what you get in the esoteric tradition is like it's the life force, it's not a person, right? That was a big change for me. Like when I had my encounter, I was like, oh, God is not a what, God is a who. And that's all the difference of trying to wield the life force, of which the devil is the image of, right? The Baphomet is the great magical agent that basically you need to train yourself to learn how to wield, to manifest your will, and to be the depository of the power of God, as he puts it, So yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I guess, and does it lean toward monism? Do you think in the end that all this everything is one thing or no?
Yes, yeah, for sure. The life power is, the ruach, chi, prana is all talking about this intelligent life force that then divides itself first into the Trinity, the three forces, then the seven powers, symbolized by the planets, then the 12 astrological signs. And all of this is talking about the kind of manifestation of the one life force into its manifold expressions, which the tree of life brings all together in this syncretic system.
But then it's like if we are that. Oh, do you have, are you getting
I'm
harassed
good.
there?
Yeah, I just
Okay.
got to
He lives in Detroit, so this
it's
could be
okay.
any.
Thank you.
This could be a mugging right now.
This could be right.
Uh,
Fake fake police, fake anyways, I just gotta park somewhere else. It's all good.
who
So
was
yeah,
it?
go
Was
ahead.
it okay? What was that? Some official or just you can't be
Yeah,
talking
some
about this kind of stuff here, son.
yeah, right. See, man, dude, they're listening, dude. They're listening. Okay.
That's great. Well,
So yes,
uh,
the tree
yeah.
of life is like um it's yeah, monism, but it also, that's why I thought it was so cool. It's like, oh, this does bring all the pagan traditions and shows how they all connect under the one God who is a unity. So you can like you can practice your magic with the Greek gods or the Egyptian gods, whatever force you want to get in touch with, all the while remembering that it's all the one under the dominion of the impersonal life force
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you're trying to channel down through you to do whatever your will is, whatever magic ceremony suits your needs at the time.
Well, that's where that's where it bridges to. That's where it bridges over to the Eastern mysticism, at least the Alan Watts brand of it. This kind of stuff.
Sure.
The no self. Well, I'll tell a little. I might ride through this too. I got rid of a lot of tarot cards. This is just a side note, but I got rid of a lot of tarot cards, and they were hard to get rid of. I noticed even now, and I was like, my mind will start to make excuses. We could get into a whole stream
Mm-hmm.
about this one day, but like I had dedicated so much time and effort to learning those, and then to unlearning them and being able to use them as a tool for communicating with people. All kinds of crazy. There's an exercise by Christopher Hyatt, called de-victimization technique, which I think is a totally fine way to use the tarot cards. It's not a mystical thing at all, actually. So in that vein, I did hold on to them for a long time, but I also thought I don't know. I'm not. What am I going to do? Do readings? I also studied how to be a fake psychic too for
Yeah.
many years. And I don't know if that's really a cool thing either, because you're at least convincing another person that there's secret powers.
Right.
And so you're subjecting them to what might be secret powers, but as we know now, that would be demonic powers. Because who else would it be? The God's powers are not secret and they're not on demand.
Mm.
As far
Yes.
as I understand, that's one of the big differences, that we will get, that everything we're getting, no matter what, is already for our salvation. That's what it means, that God is love. And that not that we wouldn't ask for things and pray. I think that's totally fine. I even see that in the saints, but to not lose faith or to make demands, like in the
Yeah.
sense of the occultist. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, and it's
go
interesting
ahead.
because, well, Father Turbo sums that up, and magic magic is to prayer as love, as making love, right? So trying to trying to manipulate the will, or have God's powers on demand. That's what magic is about. But you can almost kind of sympathize with the Protestant view of how you know, works. Oh, so you're saying we're saved by works? Like their whole thing is like, no works. We're saved already, right? And
Yeah.
obviously they've taken that too far, but you can kind of see how that split when Protestantism broke off, that was the beginning of, the occult. Because once you stripped all the tradition out of it, it kind of went underground without Christ. Like they kept Christ and no work, no fasting, no meditation, just Jesus and the Bible. And then you see kind of that split go, then you got the occult rise out of that in a
Well,
sense.
you had, as far as I know, before that. I mean, the occult stuff goes way back though, because you had
Sure, sure.
like the stuff about Solomon, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And Solomon subjecting, and I don't know if that was ever intended. I haven't studied the Orthodox Church Fathers' writings or analysis of Solomon or any of that kind of stuff. But there was an argument that Christopher Hyatt made in the aptly titled book called "Pacts with the Devil" that convinced me, and I'll
Read that one.
contextualize this, but that convinced me that it was a fascinating book. I'm not sure how well researched it was, but the premise, as I recall, was basically that prior to the Middle Ages, it was normal to deal with God and angels and spirits as an individual, not necessarily without the church, but not necessarily only with the church as well. And I don't know if he was talking about in Catholic countries or what time in the what period of the Middle Ages or whatever, but the idea was that basically people would work out their salvation and conquering actual demons and all this kind of stuff, and then that it was this was his argument, not mine, and that it was crushed by the church, which I'm assuming he means the Catholic Church, and
Yeah.
that only priests are allowed to do this kind of thing. So then he was trying to say, oh well, here I'm giving it back to you. Now you can go and summon the demons
Yeah.
yourself. And but
And see,
the hubris
yeah,
involved in taking
yeah,
that stance, like, oh, I'm the one, and I'm gonna go.
yeah.
I'm King
Well,
Solomon. Yeah,
but that's the whole. So that's what I was doing research on. That's the whole occult line. That's the whole Western esoteric line. And but when you do research, you're like, and even Father Turbo said like all this stuff they're trying to trace their lineage back and back. He's like,
yeah,
that's all nonsense. That's all
yeah.
nonsense. It's like they're basically 18th century. The Freemasons popped up in the 18th century. They try to trace their lineage back to, I mean, really to the angels. That the angels taught Adam the Kabbalah, and he kept that secret. Or Moses, really, Adam, but then Moses. They gave us the Ten Commandments, but for the initiates, they got the Kabbalah. They got the real angelic teachings. That's literally their
Well,
line.
Golden
Uh,
Dawn goes straight to Enochian magic.
yeah, yeah, which is
John Dee
John
and Gordon
D.
Kelly. Yeah,
Right.
that's why I was lucky. Okay, so I'll lay it out here quick. I'm excited now for the channel. It just that we just touched on like 20,000 things that
Yeah, right.
that we
So
could.
many.
It's going to be
Yeah,
fun. We'll have to be careful to not go become super nerds on the occult level, but I think there's a reason
sure.
behind all of this stuff. Number one being that occultists and seekers and stuff that are watching this, I used to end up working with a lot of these guys in the undoing work,
Yeah.
and it used to be on the premise of, well, this will clarify your mind, get you out of your head, back home to the body, and you'll see what you're actually doing, and it'll empower whatever else you're doing, which
Yep.
I guess is true. But what was interesting is that it also, if you stick with it long enough, starts to undo the brokenness of the worldview itself. And the worldview being the set of assumptions about morality, epistemology, metaphysics, and related things. And at that level, there's only a few worldviews. There's
Yes.
later clothing on them. You could say, oh, there's New Age, there's Eastern Mystic, there's syncretism, there's yogi, whatever. But if you zoom back, there's like monism, nihilism, or orthodoxy, basically
Yeah.
Christianity. Like
Yes.
there's. But anyway, so I was an anarchist and an atheist and all this. Strangely enough, Christ was always around me, and by that I mean I was listening to Johnny Cash songs like "Let My Spirit Be Unchained," all these things, and loved it. Really felt it and loved it, singing them and listening to the band 16 Horsepower, which I didn't know was Christian,
Mm.
but loving that. And the band Spain, they had a song called "Spiritual" that was like explicitly about Christ. And I went and saw them live even. So I don't know what I was thinking, but this was the level of incoherence and confusion was like
Sure.
started with kind of like punk rock. So there was some form of rebellion, then punk rock, punk rock led into like meeting these protesters, getting involved with protesting against, I guess it was like white supremacists. And I don't even think there were any. Maybe there were some around. There was problems with that in Minneapolis. Whatever, it's not here or there. But I met all these people. Oh, there's a whole culture around this, protesting, and I'll spare the details of all this, but that went on for years and years, and I had some wild and beautiful and amazing experiences, beautiful people. But it shattered that's the first thing that shattered my awareness out of like everyday normality. I don't know how else to put it, I saw people working their jobs. I saw people, I remember one particular moment on the streets of Minneapolis, walking to the post office, and I saw everybody walking around outside, like maybe 1 million people. I don't know how many, or hundreds of thousands, or 10,000. I don't know. Lots of people on the street, let's say. But it all seemed vacant. And I'm not putting them down, but it seemed like there was like a robotic or mechanistic nature to what I observed, and it was horrifying. And I was like, number one, I'm not quite in that. And to whatever degree I am, it's horrifying. And so that led to a really rebellion against working jobs, a rebellion against kind of actually all of civilization. I didn't stop with government. I never was a communist or anything. That didn't make sense to me. It was like, we should own we should own the means of production. And I was like, I'm not working in the coal mine either way. Like, no, yeah, right. I don't care if I own it or not. Like, no, not going to happen. And there's a lot of pride and hubris in that. But I was like, no, I see everyone is miserable. Mm-hmm. The root of it was my parents, everyone else's parents, to some degree, tense and miserable. Not all the time. There was happiness. There was barbecues. You know what I mean? But this underlying thing of, oh man, this drudgery of the week, mm-hmm. and then this escape of the weekend. So that led up to then the protests, and I read the Industrial Society and Its Future by Ted Kaye, who I still have some kind of strange affinity for, at least his analysis of civilization and what's going on, the absolute meaninglessness of most of the things that we're doing.
Yeah.
So that started chipping away at everything. And I even had letters back and forth with old Ted. Very interesting character. Probably a victim of MK Ultra and all that kind of stuff. Mm. Doesn't mean that his ideas were wrong, but it maybe spun him into the violent direction. But so that, and then the protesting, and at some point something happened. I don't know when. I don't remember exactly what. It might have been weed and mushrooms. Definitely those happened, and those were like, whoa, dude, okay, there's something else going on here. But I was still terrified. I remember there was fireworks. I was like standing on the top of this hill in my neighborhood in North Minneapolis and looking down in the skyline, and suddenly I heard these explosions. I was with a friend who was also an anarchist, and my first time ever. And there was these explosions and all this fire and stuff, and I was like, dude, civilization is collapsing right now. I believed it. I really believed it for like maybe 5 minutes. And I was like, whoa, man, like, what do we do? It's happening. The whole thing's over. Like, fully convinced, And then we kept looking and then realized, oh, no, dude, it's fireworks. There's like something going on downtown. And we just stood there looking at each other like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
But then that specifically showed me how my ideas were influencing what I was seeing and experiencing,
Sure.
So that cracked things open. It took a lot of time. There were many other experiences in there, but a lot of nature, a lot of wild nature too. Just being outside. I love nature. I was pissed off at all the destruction of it, the poison of it, all that kind of thing. So that was what combined to lead to the anarchy and anarchism and all that. I never questioned the worldview of it. I didn't see that it's easily defeated philosophically, but the core of it was a truth. The core of it was yearning for something. Like what is wrong here, and sure. What can I do about it? And so then somebody introduced me to Robert Anton Wilson, Illuminatus trilogy.
Hmm.
And I was also big into like these weird online book catalogs in the early online days, and before that, paper catalogs like Lumpanics, which had all kinds of insane stuff, but some of it was about seeking. And then the old Falcon, New Falcon Publishing,
Okay.
now Original Falcon. And I was lucky to have all these used bookstores around. And I also had read some Buddhist stuff prior to that, but I don't know why I rejected Christianity. I had no reason to reject it, but it just was part of the
Oh yeah.
civilization, you know? It's got to go. Everything's got to go. So then read Robert Anton Wilson, and through that I just started a chain of who I found Christopher Hyatt through Robert Anton Wilson. Found got in touch with Christopher Hyatt, learned the radical undoing stuff. Prior to that, I had met like 7 different people. Okay, I read the Robert Anton Wilson. He references Crowley. I started reading Crowley. I had already had the Book of Lies when I was a teenager, but I had no context for it. So it was like,
Mm.
what is this crap, you know?
Hmm.
But I did have it for some reason. And then Wilson to Crowley. Started reading tons and tons of his stuff. And while I was reading the Crowley stuff, I was like, is there really a group of people doing this? And I was in Eugene, Oregon. And within maybe 6 months, I met 7 different people at different locations in that town. One on the river, one at the grocery store, one at the coffee shop, one at the other coffee shop, one at the sweets, bakery, whatever. Different location, and they were all part of the OTO. I was like,
What year was this?
that would have been like 1999 or 2000.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I'm not going to say the names of anybody or anything. I'm still friends with
Sure.
some of these guys. I committed a heresy there, according to them. But I'm friends with like half of those people because they were great friends. We
Yeah.
were seekers together. We had a lot of experiences together. And then the ones who didn't remain these true believers of that, they're great friends still. I would love to see them. So it's
Mm.
not everybody that's like that. But
You got a big presence in Detroit. The OTO does, because Crowley like came to Detroit actually. Um,
interesting. No, that's right. And then Portland too has a huge scene. There's Lon
um,
Milo
yeah, of
Duquette and all
course.
that stuff. That whole West Coast thing.
Yeah, I read a lot of him. Yeah.
And I knew David Jones. If for anybody who's deep into all this stuff, David R. Jones, God rest his soul. He died, I guess, last year or 2 years ago. But he was a good friend for a long time and really deep into the occult and L.A. and all this stuff before I knew him. Maybe some really dark stuff too. I have no idea. I'm not going to talk shit on the guy because I never saw him do anything bad, but he was deeply, deeply involved with all this occult stuff. And but he was the one who first told me, hey, you know what, man? All this stuff leads back to Christianity at some point. But through him, I got into the Freemasons. I also joined the OTO first. Then I joined because I was like, oh, they're recruiting me. What else could I think? Reading the Crowley. Prior to reading the Crowley, I don't meet any of these people.
Yep.
I'm only hanging out with anarchists,
Yep.
and woodland creature people or whatever. And then suddenly, the OTO people just drop in my life at the same time as I'm reading that book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
had full magical thinking about that.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
where are they coming from? How do they know? What's going on here? What do they know
Yeah.
that I don't know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to know this. So
Right.
and I met then I was studying that stuff on my own, and I met some other crazy magic people that were unaffiliated, but also fascinating, and so God rest their souls too. I think they're both dead now, but Damien was quite this wizard guy, self-styled. In a certain sense, in a theatrical sense, I love these characters, man. I absolutely love these characters. You know, I absolutely love them. I'm glad they came into my life, man. Like these were, and most of that stuff that was like, let's make a Turkish barbecue. Let's make a Turkish what do you call it? Like potluck. Let's play some music. Let's go to the Viking and fairy festival in the woods. Whatever. It was like LARPing. Almost all of it was like LARPing. But
Yeah.
and luckily I didn't get involved. I didn't even know about Temple of Set and all this kind of craziness. And now we can see that's tied into the pedo cults and the government, and which we'll get into that stuff at some point. But there's other channels that
Yeah,
cover
yeah,
that way deeper than I'd ever want to. That Colin Brower at Conspiracy Files, if anyone's interested in that line of inquiry, it's dark, but it's connected to why everybody's messed up right now. So anyway, I was lucky that I ended up in sort of theatrical circumstances. And it was good that nothing I ever really wished for through the occult came true. In a sense, I think Christ was protecting me,
yeah,
because had I gotten a bunch of money or something, dude, I would have been all in. I would have just been I would have been building my own forge to make the magical dagger. Like, I would have done all of it. I would have done every last bit of it,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You would have. So
Although
how
for
long were you in that?
but for me, there wasn't like, well, no, there were some dark things about that worldview. There was, yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't think abortion was bad. I didn't even know that there was that, how anyone could think it was wrong. I thought it was superstitious even
Yeah,
then. So that's kind of strange about the secular worldview too. There's no, what are the ethics? Where is it coming from? And I don't think people even question it very much.
yeah,
But anyway, so yeah, the OTO, Freemasons, which also the Freemasons, it was pretty tame in my experience. I actually
yeah,
enjoyed, those guys were super good to me. They helped me out in my life. They did a lot of charity work, whatever. I didn't see anything crazy there,
yeah,
but I didn't see everything. I just saw what I saw, that one particular lodge, those few guys, whatever. But I see now that why the worldview is broken. And so I'm not telling anyone they should be part of these groups. I don't think you should. I think it's ridiculous now. But there was a lot of psychedelics and things during that time as well. A lot of syncretism, studying everything. The Gurdjieff stuff was really extremely helpful, actually, in not getting stuck in magical thinking, meaning like fantastical sort of thinking, getting grounded into the body. And then the Hyatt work, the undoing work, broke the spell. It was a combination of the radical undoing work, which I still offer to people now, outside of an occult context, completely divorced from any spiritual teachings, as it should be. And I had read Robert Scheinfeld and Jed McKenna. Robert Scheinfeld recommended Jed McKenna. And the Robert Scheinfeld was called "Busting Loose from the Money Game." What a hilarious title! What a hilarious guy! I've interviewed him a few times. I love the guy. I think my worldview is broken when I interviewed him, but as a point of transition from all the occult stuff and all the seeking and all the personal development to getting out of it, his works did that for me. You know, it was in one night I was like, oh, I'm quitting the OTO. I'm quitting the Masons. I read that book with a friend out loud one night. We were thinking we were reading a marketing book. And we were both like, dude, what the hell what have we been doing? What is all this crap? Yeah, busting loose from the money game. And then the Jed McKenna, then I thought, like, no self, no self. No self is true self and all this kind of crap. That sort of shattered, but it was like a useful transition to destroy that world of seeking and all the false beliefs, to bring them all into light, to examine them and see, are they actually true? That's where the Jed McKenna and the Scheinfeld were helpful. And then finally leaving those behind, because there's no such thing as non-duality, right? Like, even from their own worldview, there can be no such thing. So then the undoing just went on and on and on, and I thought of myself as having no worldview, which of course wasn't true. And I was loosely Christian, like, oh, I like Christ. Well, nothing wrong with Christ, I don't know who he was. And I got deep into Jesse Lee Peterson for a while, which totally broken theology, but it crushed a lot of the feminist and leftist and communist mind control that we've all been subject to. Listening to Jesse Lee Peterson's takes on things broke that aspect of my brain open. It showed, like, what am I doing, dude? What is all this? Why do I think this way? Why do I feel like I can't listen to this person or learn from that person? And so I saw through a lot of the left programming, through Jesse Lee Peterson, and that's what led me more closely to Christianity. And then ultimately, 7 of my former clients in the Radical Undoing, which I never was teaching anyone to do anything spiritually with that. I was teaching them to not do that stuff, but mainly just teaching the body work, body movement and breathing to break apart chronic tensions, get free of the hell of the mind, and see what, so you can see from outside what's going on in there and know that it's not you. And then be grounded again in the body and in actuality. And from there, 7 of my former clients got in touch over the time. We stay in touch. And each of them in different parts of the world, different backgrounds, had become Orthodox. Not just Christian, but Orthodox Christian. And I was like, well, that is crazy. You know, and my first response was the rebel, like, I don't want some dudes tell me how to interpret things. You know, I don't, yeah, da, 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 da. Now it's so funny, the love I feel for those dudes I didn't want to listen to, like the absolute, just like admiration and respect.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's that's essentially it. And as I communicate with those clients who are very good friends, who I trust, you know, they're not idiots. And so I never said, oh, how could you do that? I just said, oh, I don't think I could do that, you know. I saw myself as sort of a rogue Christian, not even Protestant, even though that is a Protestant thing.
yeah.
But kind of like, I likened it to like on Sons of Anarchy or the Hells Angels, they would have the nomad, the guys who didn't have a club, but who would go help out the other clubs. And they would have nomad on their back patch. So I identified with that and thought of myself as the nomad Christian. Like, I'll just show up in places, you know. Now it's funny because there is that pilgrim sort of Russian Orthodox thing in history. Historically, there is that role, and in a certain sense, not deliberately and not even willfully, but all the hitchhiking, all the way that I ended up living my life, I can relate to those characters. You know, I can deeply relate to those characters. Henry Miller, you know, I mean, there's degeneracy there. There's tons of degeneracy in my own life too. I didn't know that's what it was, but yeah, there's
Yeah.
still part of me that I do reject degeneracy, but I have trouble. We should get into this on future streams, but I have trouble still. I look back at my life and there's parts of it that are very tragic, but there's some beauty that I just can't completely reject. You know, beauty even in the midst of crazy so-called degenerate experiences. You know what I mean? Crazy circus show in an abandoned warehouse and outside Asheville, North Carolina. The guy with the banjo, I can't tolerate anymore the craziness going on inside. We go outside. Guy I know from Seattle comes with the banjo, sits on the railroad tracks. I have a guitar, and we play music till the sun comes up. I mean, like, man, what majesty did I get to behold, you know?
Yeah.
In the midst of that crazy, crazy dark stuff, like, so I don't know where the line is there, you know what I mean? I'm not saying people should do it, but I'm also saying, like, I don't, you know, I wouldn't trade my hitchhiking years. I don't think I'd trade a lot of these years, you know? So I don't know how, this is a good question. How to repent?
Yeah.
Are we not supposed to feel that for the past? Or are we supposed to look back and say, oh, I was a total piece of garbage, you know? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I think, you know, they say where sin abounds, there grace abounds even more, you know, full, you know, even bigger. I think there's a truth there. At least I hope there is, that the darker you go, the further you go out, you might have to, it's a lot more painful winding yourself back in, but the scars you have will become wells of compassion and also wisdom if you continue for other people too, so they perhaps don't have to go. But also the little gems that pop through even in the darkness, you know, I think that's
There were so many, man. It almost brings tears to my eyes. Not in like a weepy crying sense, but in the majesty of it all, the glory of it all, like how unbelievable
yeah.
any one of those moments could be, and to end up with orthodoxy is mind blowing. So that's just a cavalier journey. I get a little too interested, even looking back at my own life. You know,
Yeah. No, I
it's
can do
all
the same.
like whoa.
Yeah. So many different directions we could go from that. It made me reflect back on what I shared. I'm like, oh, I could have. could have went a little, and we can do that over time. But yeah, there's we have so many points of contact and so many things. I mean, we could talk about everything from, in that realm of from esotericism. And like, I want to hear more about how long you were in the OTO, with sex med. I want to hear details of these things. I don't know how, at some point and to help people, because I see intelligent people still seeking. They don't even, like in my case, I was like, I found, like, yeah, alchemical Christ, yogi Christ, I'm doing the work, and yet I was really living in my head and had this whole, I guess what you might call magical thinking persisted like for a long time, and I was teaching people throughout this time, like, giving people Cambo and doing retreats and breath work, just throwing it all together, man, and just leaving people there like they left like they were on cocaine. They had a great experience, but it's like, what was, and so there's so much of that going on right now of people confusing cathartic experiences, or how many people have confused adrenaline with the Holy Spirit. I heard somebody say, and just there's so much. How many times was like, I left the ceremony like, oh, I'm healed, this is it, and then 2 weeks later I'm worse, and you can get stuck in that trap for forever.
Yeah, man, that emotional elation, mistaking emotional elation for spirituality is a big problem. Yeah. There's a great talk by Father Cosmas. Maybe it's two talks in a row. I think they're from the perspective of Father Seraphim Rose.
Yeah.
Two talks, and one of them, it's like, I'll find them. I can put them in the description here later, but it was spiritual deception, type 1 and type 2. And he likens it to type 1 and type 2 diabetes.
I probably had both. So
yeah, it was like one of them was seeking elated or spiritual experiences.
Yeah,
I think, and then I forget what the other one was.
That would be me. That would be me.
Let's see, I'll find them quick. Orthodox talks.
But if that's all you know, then that's fantastic. We like a earth-shattering, mind-shattering psychedelic experience. That fueled me for 20 years. And I thought that was it. That's what spirituality is. These experiences.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, Talk 41 on Orthodox Talks channel. Type 1 deception, striving for a high spiritual state.
Mm-hmm.
And type 2, Talk 42, type 2 deception, striving for exalted spiritual feelings.
And you look at somebody like Crowley, like why he's so seductive too. It's like he talks with such authority. He's written on every topic, like deep, right? And he's like, I had my first samadhi at 30, and then, and who he's criticizing the Buddha, and like, I could never criticize Buddha. Clearly, this guy knows what he's talking about, right? Yeah. He's taking people's worldviews down and talking shit about master teachers and calling himself the prophet of the new. Like, who am I I can't say this. So clearly, this guy is somebody to follow. And I look back now and you see all these guys that are, they're the same guys who played Magic the Gathering at the Pokemon store. And, and it's like, they didn't get the girl in high school, so they're seeking power and things in the occult. It's like so clear once you get on the other side of, and you look at Crowley, it's like he hated his mom until he died. And then it's, he just had hatred in him that he never healed. And it's like, shit,
yeah,
you just look at his whole psychology from there.
And it's like, I think once you get that invested, I don't even know what it's like at that level. Once you're that invested down that road, I guess it's hard to turn around. But I'm not sure anyone even confronted him on it, or would he even be able to perceive a confrontation from Orthodoxy, for example. I guess Gurdjieff rejected Crowley, and Gurdjieff was more grounded in Orthodoxy. And yet, almost all the people I meet that are fascinated with Gurdjieff are more fascinated with Gurdjieff than they are with Christ. Or not saying you should be fascinated, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I asked some people, well, why? If you know that Gurdjieff comes from the Orthodox tradition, why not just go to the Orthodox tradition then? They're like, well, I just do both. And I'm like, but there's some contradictions between those two,
Yeah. I mean, I would have been healthier if I went down the Gurdjieff route than the Crowley route, for sure. Yeah. I would have but Gurdjieff came later, and then some of that work, and it did give some context, like learning the Enneagram, was a way out of the tree of life and the astrology. At least it was more practical and showed you your neuroses. So you could, that was a process of me starting to see myself like, oh, like
Hmm.
7 on the Enneagram, charlatan and gluttony. Like, okay, yep, I'm both of those. Like, I was like, okay, you're a narcissist. Okay. Like you start to see that you can't run from them anymore. Cause it was
Yeah.
like throughout that whole time, my life was, I had some highs, some peak experiences. I mean, I served ayahuasca on National Geographic. I was making some money from this. I had, but it was all, my life was, I was mean to my wife. They couldn't do anything for me. I was not kinder. I was nothing. But at the same time, I thought I was this, like thought I was about to graduate spiritual school and I'm still in kindergarten, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah. I had the same
yeah,
delusion. Yeah, same pre-list going on. Yeah, definitely. No, not that I've fully recovered from it, but definitely not
yeah, sure.
not thinking of myself in that way. The contradiction became too much to bear. Yeah. Thank God for that. There's even some kids around here. I heard there's like some underlying spiritual Satanism or something going on. Like I guess now that everyone has access to internet. When I say around here, I mean in Croatia. And people, I kind of guessed. There's the LARPer sort of metalhead types
Yeah.
who are kind of cool. Whatever that they'd have no problem listening to Orthodox metal or whatever. For them, it's like an aesthetic, which is still dark and weird, but okay. But then there's actually like so-called spiritual Satanists who are these kind of, I don't know who it is, but it's like around. It's around. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah, yeah,
interesting to
yeah.
know that it's around.
Mm.
But they keep it to themselves more in Croatia because it's like really Catholic dominant, and people would be like, "What is this? This is horrible." Whereas in U.S. it was like out in the open there. At least I didn't feel like it was something I had to hide.
Yeah, for sure. Mm.
But anyway, I gotta get going here. But this went quick. Um, we'll be back again next Saturday, and we can always do more if it ends up being more time. We can jump on whenever. But let's just stay. Let's keep doing Saturdays, either at this time or 1 hour earlier. And this, could do a longer time. Most Saturdays it can do a longer time too. I'm just going to the singing training tonight, but yeah. So we can. Do you have an idea where we want to go next time?
It's a good question. So many different places. Maybe I'll back up. I skimmed over some important details in my story, if only to make some things clear, and that will probably
Hmm.
open up some more dialogue, and we can start to kind of, yeah, hammer home, or we're talking about the occult and coming out of it, right? And so some of the experiences within there, like why is it wrong? Where did they miss the mark, and what can be redeemed, perhaps?
Yeah, we can look at what is a worldview. Why does it matter if it's coherent or not? What does it mean for it to be coherent?
Yeah.
How our worldviews were not coherent and how they lead up to discovering orthodoxy. That's interesting.
And that word coherence is important because once I had an encounter with Christ, that was the word that just hit me. And that's why I got into the Western esoteric tradition in the first place. Like I saw coherence on the tree of life, it was a kind of false coherence with the tarot and the astrology. Like that's a whole system that is coherent within itself. So we can talk about like the difference between that and then let's say orthodoxy or something like this.
Yeah, that's great. And then from there, we set the ground to say, so what is orthodoxy? You know what I mean? And I think we
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
that particular book you mentioned to me, I think lays it out pretty clear. We can get some passages from that one. But what is orthodoxy? And it's not just some intellectual or philosophical thing. It's actually like a full whole for the whole person. It involves everything in life and in the person. So even though we might talk about it on sometimes an intellectual level, that's not the encounter of it is definitely not
Yeah.
only on that level. Yeah, we can talk some more details, like when I ended up at Ostrog Monastery and these places, just randomly, and some of your experiences on that level too. I don't want to make it like super about our personalities, but in some ways there's no escaping that. As long as it just
Yeah,
doesn't become
yeah, yeah.
always about that, you know. But yeah, we're gonna get into some good stuff. Also, we can get into some of that stuff we talked about, Operation Phoenix, Tavistock, and how and why that's relevant, where modern psychology and psychiatry, psychotherapy come from, and how it messes people up, why the body and breathing is so important, and how that's different from the New Age and the seeking stuff.
Yep. Yeah. The occult as really the mother of psychology. Astrology, in a sense, is the kind of even the mother of medicine in a way. But yeah, we can get into some things like this. Uh,
Yeah, great stuff. Well, kind of like how Werner von Braun and Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were behind the NASA craziness.
yeah, yeah.
Similar with like Freud, Edward Bernays, and the psychiatric establishment, coupled with the government, Tavistock, other kinds of things going on. I'm sure there was mirrors of Tavistock in Russia, Japan, and all these other places. And
Yeah, this should be fun. It'll be an education for both of us too, and learning experience.
yeah. It's mind blowing. Yeah, and the cultural Marxism, the Frankfurt School. Man, there's so yeah. We can get into the backdrop of how and why people have gotten all crazed and messed up, and then show how we stepped outside of it and offer ways for them to do the same. I always encourage everyone to go check out a divine liturgy if you haven't. You know, look up the Orthodox Church in your area and check it out if you're ready for that. If not, either way, come back to the channel. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Share it with your friends, enemies, and family. And and we'll have people on too. We can invite people onto the stream as well. So we'll just see how it goes. But we'll bring on some guests and go deep into a bunch of different stuff. Well, I'm excited. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure, man. Good stuff. All right, we'll see you next week.
Sounds good, man. Take care, Chris. Thanks for coming on, and look forward to doing this with you.
Yeah, man. You too.
God bless. Enjoy.
You too. Peace.